I don't care what you think of former President Trump, whether you want him in office, whether you think he won, you can go hardcore MAGA or hardcore resistance. And to me, the truth is evident. This is a targeted persecution of the guy. They want him in handcuffs. They'll do it however they can. And Merrick Garland is risking the integrity and trust of the Department of Justice in order to do it. He has taken us all down a very dark path. That's my take. I've said it before, and I say it again, even having seen now the judge's order, the warrant, the warrant that they got. What's your take?
That it seems to be either disproportionate or pretextual. There's nothing wrong per se with a former president, or even a president for that matter, being investigated or prosecuted. We live in a country in which we're all equal under the law. That's important. But that runs both ways. If the argument is that Joe down the street would be investigated and prosecuted for alleged crime X, then so should a former president. But what if Joe down the street wouldn't be investigated or prosecuted, or in this case, searched? And that's the part that worries me. We, of course, don't see many Joe down the street cases related to the Presidential Records Act, but we have seen a lot of cases in recent years to do with classified information and to do with people having documents that they shouldn't, most famously with Hillary Clinton. She wasn't searched. She also wasn't prosecuted. And I think if this case turns out to be related to the Presidential Records Act or anything of that nature, the search will look disproportionate. And that matters a great deal, because the other value in play here, alongside equality under the law, is our perception of our government as even-handed and unwilling to use or abuse its power to go after its political rivals. And it does look to me in this case either that the Department of Justice has elevated what is a relatively minor infraction beyond its status, or, as my colleague Andy McCarthy has argued, used the alleged violation of the Presidential Records Act as a prerequisite, as an excuse to go in and look for other information, perhaps related to January 6th, that it can use against Trump in the future.
That's exactly what I've been saying as well. I've been reading Andy and agree with him wholeheartedly. The night that the news broke, I was watching my television saying, if you believe this is about presidential records, you're crazy. This is about January 6th and getting him however they can. They need the evidence of intent. If they're going to charge him with conspiracy to defraud the American public or government officials or obstructing Congress, they need an element of intent. They have to get into Trump's head and prove he knew what he was saying about the election was nonsense. And they haven't been able to do it. There's no evidence of that. In fact, to the contrary, even if you disbelieve his election claims, as I know you do and I do, I will be quick to say I believe Trump believed them. I believe Trump believed. I don't think they're going to find evidence that he was actively lying, because I don't think Trump thinks he's ever lost anything. So they're on a witch hunt. Andy had a piece, I think, in which he said something like, they may be looking for a needle in the haystack, but they have the whole haystack now. They went in there, they got the entire haystack from Mar-a-Lago, and they're pouring through passports and everything else. And if you look at the warrant, it's very telling, because it's not narrowly tailored to get classified documents. It really has very little to do with classified documents. And that's no surprise, since as president, he could have declassified everything. And by the way, Hillary Clinton kept 30,000 emails that she shouldn't have, 2,000 of which were classified. And then she destroyed the documents and the hard drive with a hammer. Okay, so nobody raided her. So this isn't about classified documents. This is about something else. And so if you look at the warrant, it cast the widest net humanly possible. They can get everything. Every document in there, as long as it related to the Trump administration. It doesn't have to be limited to classified things or nuclear secrets, as the DOJ tried to leak late last week in an attempt to cover itself. It's as wide as it can possibly go. It's boxes of documents and anything near them, which I suppose is why they were in Melania's closet. This is an attempt to get him in handcuffs and get him out of the 2024 race.
Well, there's the two-step, you see, because if the investigation was really about the Presidential Records Act, then it would make sense to have a wide net. And if you're actually looking for documents that should be within the federal government's possession instead of former President Trump's possession, then sure, you would say all 4 years of his presidency in the warrant. But because it seems pretty obvious that that doesn't or shouldn't rise to the level, because we would not see a search warrant on that basis for anyone else, because Hillary Clinton, albeit with a slightly different law, in some cases, not in others, the Espionage Act is invoked here too, was not searched, then the government knows that they have to sex it up a bit. And so they started talking about nuclear secrets and so on. And, you know, it reminded me of a lot of the games we've seen over the last 5 years, where people within the intelligence services or the Department of Justice will make the most extraordinary sounding case that they can, even if it's tangential. I mean, maybe there is a document there that refers to nuclear weapons, or suddenly that's nuclear secrets. It also reminds me, I must say, of some of the games that were played with weapons of mass destruction, where when you looked at the real information, you weren't too impressed. But if you looked at the way that it was being reported in the newspapers or sold to the UN, it sounded absolutely terrifying. So yeah, that irritated me, but it also showed the way that they're doing one thing with the warrant and another thing when they're leaking to the Washington Post.
Andy had a piece talking about how the Presidential Records Act is not a criminal statute, but they're basically trying to use the criminal law to enforce the Presidential Records Act. They went and they opened a grand jury. The little guy at the National Archives, who is clearly anti-Trump. I mean, he's made public statements about how January 6th was the worst day of his life and how he intentionally resigned under President Biden because he wanted to be replaced by this administration. That guy found out when he got the return of the 15 boxes that Trump had taken with him when he left office, that there was stuff in there that was arguably classified. And by the way, like the notion that Trump sat around, you know, like with his girlfriends braiding each other's hair, packing up the boxes on his last day in office. It wasn't Trump who packed any of this stuff, right? It was clearly some aide who shipped up boxes and sent them to Mar-a-Lago. All right, so this guy at the National Archives gets the 15 boxes back. Okay, good. So far, good. And says, oh my God, I think there's classified stuff in here. Doesn't ask whether Trump declassified them, as is his power as president, but simply goes to DOJ. Didn't go to DOJ over Hillary Clinton. There, he went back to the State Department and said, hey, she's got a private server. But with President Trump, it's right over to the Department of Justice, run by Merrick Garland. And what does Merrick Garland do? He opens up a grand jury. He gets a grand jury proceeding going to look into this, which, I mean, the die was cast, right? And so the grand jury says, oh, it looks bad. Yes, okay. Next thing we know, we're in search warrant territory and we're going down the lane. And Charles, it very much looks like they are going to indict the former president of the United States. What exactly on, I don't know. Could be related to January 6th if they get their evidence of intent. Could be based on the Presidential Records Act, which again is not a criminal statute, but they're using the criminal law to enforce it. I don't know exactly. It could be the Espionage Act if there's something in those boxes that they think relates to national security, despite the fact, again, that he was president and could have declassified anything. And all hell is going to break loose in this country if they do that.
Yeah, and I think it should. I'll put this in context for those of your listeners who don't know me. I think Trump should have been impeached by Congress. I don't think, though, that Trump has committed a crime. And those are separate questions. I think Congress would have been entirely within its rights to say that the executive branch, led by Trump, had behaved in a way that was unacceptable, and that Trump was hereby barred from making it all the way to the White House. Again, that's a political question. But Congress didn't do that. It chose not to do that. And the idea that we can just swap one out for another, that impeachment and prosecution are synonyms, is wrong. In this country, and indeed in any free country, we should operate on the presumption that we investigate crimes and not people. We don't start with the suspicion or intuition that someone is a bad egg and then spend our time trying to work out which crimes they've committed. I mean, we did that with almost anyone. We would be able to find something. I'm a pretty law-abiding guy. I'm an immigrant, so I'm probably more scared of the federal government than some. But I'm sure if you decided as a attorney general to come into my house and look around, you could find something that I've done wrong. I'm sure the state of Florida could find something that I've done wrong. And this seems to me what we are now seeing with Trump. We start with the premise, this is a bad guy, and we go all the way down the line until we are searching in desperation for something that we can bring against him. Merrick Garland's under a lot of pressure, especially from the progressive left, to do something. But that should worry everyone. I mean, it should have worried everyone when the New York Attorney General was doing it. It should have worried everyone under Mueller, and it should worry everyone under Merrick Garland, because that's just not how free countries are supposed to operate.
If you're like me, you're growing more and more concerned about the future. The market's all over the place. Inflation is at its highest level in 40 years. Interest rates are skyrocketing. Market experts are using terms like recession, economic hurricane, and unprecedented. If you want to protect your future, call a precious metal dealer I trust, American Hartford Gold. They can show you how to protect your savings and retirement accounts by buying your portfolio with physical gold and silver. All it takes to get started is a short phone call, and they will have physical gold and silver delivered right to your door or inside your IRA or 401k. And they keep it simple. They're the highest rated firm in the country with an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and thousands of satisfied clients. And as an exclusive offer for our fans, if you call them right now, they're going to give you up to $1,500 of free silver and a free safe on qualifying orders. So don't wait. Call now. Call 866-518-2955. That's 866-518-2955, or just text Megyn. That's MEGYN to 65532. Again, call 866-518-2955 or text Megyn to 65532. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.